Cane toads are on the march, sweeping across northern Australia into the wilds of the Kimberley. It's been disastrous for local wildlife.
Everyone is obsessed with the new plan to save Australia's wildlife, and honestly, it is getting pretty intense. Experts are officially releasing native ants to hunt down the most toxic animal in the country. Local rangers are taking on the toads with the help of science. On top of that, they have built a genetic monster that stays a baby forever just so it can eat its own brothers and sisters. It has been missing for years, but this plan is finally coming to light. So, here is the deal. We are looking at a cannibalistic war happening in the ponds of the outback. We have some key details about the latest results that will definitely shock you, because the numbers are absolutely off the charts. Root cause of the chaos. When most people hear the name Peter Pan, they think of a fun character from a book. They think of a boy who can fly and never grows up. In the wild lands of Australia, there is another version of Peter Pan. But this is not a fairy tale for kids. Australia has paid a heavy price many times for making big mistakes with nature. True to the name, this version of Peter Pan also never grows up. The only thing it does is eat its own kind. A group of very smart people carried out many tests to make them eat and wipe out 99% of their own eggs. They believe this would be an excellent way to deal with an invading species that is taking over the country. The tests showed very positive results. But for one special reason, the project was never put into the real world. To understand why, we have to look at how this mess started. Everything began in the early 20th century. At that time, sugarcane was a huge way to make money for the area known as Queensland. It made up more than 20% of all the farming value in the region. The sugar barons were the kings of the north, and they protected their crops with everything they had. But just as the sugar business was doing its best, a crisis hit. A bug called the grayback cane beetle began to destroy the crops. These young bugs ate the roots of the plants and caused the sugar yields to drop by as much as 40% in some places. Farmers were desperate. They needed a solution fast, or they would lose everything. Australia heard reports from the island of Puerto Rico about a certain kind of toad. People said this toad could eat the bugs and save the crops. In the year 1932, researchers began asking for advice. This turned out to be an enormous mistake. Australia never properly checked if these toads actually ate the bugs they were supposed to hunt. There were no lab tests and no field trials. Everything was based only on what people said in other countries. It was a conspiracy of hope over science. By the year 1935, around 102 South American cane toads were brought in from Hawaii. They were bred and then released into the wild near the Gordon area in Queensland. Every single cane toad in Australia today comes from that one small group of 102 individuals. Some people even whispered that the toads were brought in for more than just bugs, that they were a test for biological control that went horribly wrong. At the time, no one thought a few dozen toads could do anything bad, but in just about 70 years, they became a nightmare. They ate nearly everything they could find. They ate small animals and they ate plants. Slowly, they pushed the local wildlife out of whole regions. They turned nearly 500,000 square miles of Australia into a place ruled by 200 million cane toads. That is a lot of toads. While the human population of Australia in the year 26 is only about 27 million, the toads outnumber them by a huge amount. They are nearly 20 times more numerous than all the koalas left in the entire world. This is not a harmless little frog you might find in a garden, but the danger was growing faster than anyone could ever believe. Cane toads are not harmless like common frogs. Cane toads are some of the most toxic land and water animals on Earth. In their home in South America, other animals have lived with them for millions of years. Those predators learned how to avoid them or how to handle their poison. But Australia was different. An entire world of animals was suddenly face to face with a poison they had no defense against. The body of a cane toad is like a living container of toxic chemicals. They have two large lumps behind their heads called glands. These glands release a milky white liquid. This liquid is a mix of toxins that attack the heart and the brain. If a pet dog even licks a toad, it can start having shakes and pass away in less than 1 hour. A toad that is only about 8 inches long has enough poison to wipe out a full-grown crocodile. Some wild theories suggest that these toads are actually evolving to be more toxic as they encounter stronger Australian predators. It is like they are absorbing the harshness of the outback and turning it into a weapon. This is not an overstatement. It is a real thing that happens in the Northern Territory. What makes it even worse is that this toxin exists at every part of the toad's life. It is in the eggs, the tadpoles, the young ones, and the adults. This means that if a fish eats the eggs, it dies. If a small fish eats the tadpoles, it dies. If a lizard or a snake eats an adult toad, it almost certainly dies too. In a world like this, very few predators can survive. Even the brown snake, which is one of the most toxic snakes in the world, can die in less than 30 minutes after biting a toad. Freshwater crocodiles are the kings of the rivers in the north. They started dying in huge numbers as the toads spread into their territory. In some areas, 70% of the crocodiles were wiped out in just a few years. Big lizards called monitor lizards were hit the hardest. In many places, 90% of them vanished after the toads arrived. A single female toad can lay up to 30,000 eggs at once. She can do this twice a year if the weather is good. That means billions of new toads are born every single year. The tadpoles are also toxic. Their poison is a bit weaker than the adults, but it is still strong enough to end the life of native frogs or fish. Interestingly, some birds can eat the tadpoles without dying. This small detail is very important for the future. Humans also have to be careful. Touching a toad can make your skin burn or make your eyes red and sore. There are stories of people in the deep north using the toxin for strange rituals, though that has never been proven. In northern Australia, vets see many cases of toad poisoning every week. The money side of things is also bad. Experts think the damage to nature has cost more than $2 billion over the years. This includes the cost of trying to save rare animals and the loss of money from tourists who want to see the wild. There is even a risk to big businesses like mining, which is worth billions. Then, the monsters started to change in ways that terrified the experts. Why they are becoming even more dangerous? There's one key detail that most people do not realize. Cane toads in Australia are actually becoming more toxic than the ones in South America. Their poison is getting stronger. A study from the year 2015 found that the glands on Australian toads are bigger. The concentration of the chemicals in their skin is about 50% higher than in the original toads. Some researchers believe they are self-turbocharging, literally breeding for the most potent venom to ensure nothing can stop their march. And that is not even the worst part. They are also changing how they look and move. From the year 2018
scientists
to
saw
2022,
that these toads are evolving 5 to 10 times faster than normal animals.
5 to 10 times
In the
faster
areas where
than
the
normal
toads are
animals.
moving into new land,
In the areas
their
where the
bodies have
toads are
changed a
moving
lot.
into new land,
Their legs are about
bodies have
6%
changed a
longer
lot.
than they used to
Their
be.
legs are about
Their
6%
muscles are stronger
longer than
and
they
their
used to be.
livers are bigger.
Their muscles are stronger
They also
and their
do not get
livers are
stressed as
bigger.
easily.
They also
This
do
means
not
they
get
can travel
stressed
much
as easily.
further without getting
This
tired.
means they can travel
Back
much
in the
further without getting
1940s, a
tired.
toad would move only
Back
about
in the
5 miles in a
1940s,
year.
a toad would
By
move
the year
only about
2010,
5
they were
meters
moving
in a
up to
year.
40 miles
By the
per
year
year.
2010,
The fastest
they were moving
toads
up
were
to
recorded
40
moving
meters per
47
year.
miles.
The fastest toads were recorded moving 47 miles in a single year. To put that in perspective, they are moving faster than the width of a small country. This kind of speed has never been seen in nature before for this type of animal. It is the same species, but the Australian version is like a super toad. It moves many times faster than its cousins in South America. Some wild theories suggest that the toads are being guided by an almost hive mind intelligence, as they always seem to find the best water sources even in the middle of a drought. A small mistake made in 1935 has now turned into a super invading force. It is not just the toads that are changing either. Other animals are trying to adapt just to stay alive. Some lizards have stopped hunting big animals and now only eat small bugs. Some native mammals have even grown smaller heads over time. They did this so they physically cannot fit an adult cane toad in their mouths. Right now, the number of toads in Australia is about the same as the number of people living in the country of Brazil. Every single one is toxic, and they have babies at a crazy rate. Handpicking them or using traps is not enough. It's like trying to empty the ocean with a tiny spoon. You can remove millions of toads every year, but the population stays the same. Because of this, a famous scientist named Professor Rick Shine decided to try something completely different. He realized that if you cannot stop the adults, you have to stop the babies. Some people think this is playing God, but in the outback, it is a matter of life and death. This led to a wild idea that would change biology forever. Reverse thinking. The Peter Pan idea came from the need to be smart about how we fight back. The goal was to create tadpoles that would never grow up to be toads. These modified tadpoles would live 4 or 5 times longer than normal ones. Because they stay in the water longer, they have more time to find and eat the eggs of their own species. This sounds like something from a movie, and it was very hard to do. Scientists had to use a tool called CRISPR to change the genes in the eggs. Every single egg had to be injected by hand with a tiny needle. Some people whisper that these Peter Pan creatures are being designed for more than just eating toads, that they might be the first step in a new type of biological engineering. Basically, the science works like this. Tadpoles can only turn into toads when their bodies make a special hormone. You can think of this hormone like a light switch. When the switch goes on, the tadpole grows legs, loses its tail, and hops onto land. The researchers use the gene tool to turn that switch off forever. No hormone means no change. The animal stays a tadpole for its whole life. They injected the eggs when they were only a few hours old. The success rate was about 70%. While it is hard to do this to millions of eggs, the results were incredible. These Peter Pan tadpoles were bigger and stronger than normal ones. They also had a huge appetite for eggs. Cane-toed tadpoles in Australia were already very aggressive. They were already twice as likely to eat other eggs than the ones in South America. After the gene editing, they became perfect hunters. One scientist said that if these big tadpoles are in a pond, no new eggs will ever survive to hatch. There's a theory that if these tadpoles ever escaped into the wild on a massive scale, they could accidentally wipe out every amphibian in the country. When they looked at the data from the years 2023 and 2024, they realized they had something that could destroy the whole reproductive cycle of the toad. Normal tadpoles only live in a pond for about 20 days. After that, they leave the water and become toads, but the Peter Pan version lives for nearly 100 days. This is perfect because adult toads come back to the same pond to lay eggs many times during the season. The Peter Pan tadpoles are always there waiting for them. A normal tadpole is tiny, but the Peter Pan ones are 3 times larger. Being big means they can swim faster and take over the best spots in the pond. It also means they can eat a lot more. A normal tadpole might eat 5,000 eggs in its short life, but a Peter Pan tadpole can eat 35,000. But the final data from the field was the most shocking part. Real-world experimental results. One Peter Pan tadpole can eat an entire pile of eggs from one female toad. This means just a few of them can completely clear out a pond. The best part is that they cannot have babies of their own. Since they never become adults, they never leave the water and they never reproduce. They are trapped in the pond until they eventually pass away. This means there's no risk of them spreading into places where they do not belong. But even with these amazing numbers, there is a reason why scientists are still being very careful. Some wild theories suggest that the toads might find a way to evolve around this, that they might start laying eggs in places where the Peter Pan tadpoles cannot reach. The number of native eggs they ate was very low, but it was not zero. This is why the project has stayed in closed ponds for now. No one wants to make another mistake that hurts the local animals. Scientists also did tests on albino toads to see how gene editing affects them. They found that changing even one gene can cause other problems. The albino toads were weaker and had bad eyesight. They died much more often than normal toads because they could not find food as well. This taught the experts that they must be very cautious before releasing any genetic changes into the wild. What if the Peter Pan tadpoles don't die after 100 days? What if they live for years, growing into giant underwater toxic monsters? While the gene work continues, Australia is also using other ways to fight the toads. They use traps that smell like toad eggs to catch thousands of tadpoles at once. They are also using native meat ants. These ants are very tough and they love to eat young toads. It's a war of tiny swarms against toxic giants. If scientists can guide the ants to the water's edge, the ants can wipe out 90% of the toads that try to crawl onto land. They're even training crocodiles and lizards to stay away from toads. They give the animals a small piece of toad meat that makes them feel sick but does not eliminate them. The animals learn fast and stop hunting the toxic toads. Another big plan is called the Dry Shield. This project costs $18 million. It involves moving water tanks and troughs so that cattle can drink but toads cannot reach the water. In the dry parts of the north, a toad will die in just a few days if it cannot find water. By cutting off their water supply, scientists can stop the toads from moving across the desert. Some people believe this is the only way to save the West. The plan is to have this finished by the year 2028. It's a long battle, but humans are starting to get smarter about how they fight. Some wild theories even suggest that the toads are moving toward the cities, seeking human-made water sources to survive the shield. The story of the cane toad in Australia shows us that there is no one simple answer. It will take a mix of high-tech gene editing, native ants, and better water management to save the wildlife. It has been a long time since that first mistake in 1935, but the effort to fix it is stronger than ever. Everyone is working together to make sure the native animals have a future. Some say the toads are a punishment for our past mistakes, but others see them as a challenge to our creativity. The war is still going on, and every year we learn something new about how to protect this unique land.
Ant swarm. Counter-strike. The battle against the toxic nightmare in Australia has taken an even more ferocious turn. And this time, nature is fighting back with a tiny, hungry army. Experts are now officially unleashing swarms of native meat ants as a frontline weapon in a war that has lasted for nearly a century. These are not your average garden ants that you find in your kitchen. These are the brutal colony-building meat ants, known to scientists by their technical name, but known to locals as a living storm of aggression. They are famous for their massive super colonies that can stretch across hundreds of yards. In the wild ponds and water edges of the outback, these ants are being used to strike at the invaders when they are most weak. Basically, the meat ants are being guided to the exact spots where young toads are leaving the water. When a toad first changes from a tadpole into a small land animal, it is very soft and slow. It is about the size of a small fingernail, and its skin is thin. This is the moment when the meat ants strike. Experiments that have been going on for over a decade have recently shown some jaw-dropping results. When researchers brought these young toads near meat ant nests, the ants attacked with a level of coordination that was truly terrifying. In these tests, the ants managed to eliminate up to 98% of the young toads within just a few minutes. They swarmed the toads, biting into their soft bodies and dragging them away before the toads could even take their first hop into the grass. One of the most interesting things about this is how the ants treat the local frogs. Native frogs seem to be much safer. This is because native frogs have lived with these ants for thousands of years and know how to escape. They are faster and more alert. The cane toads, on the other hand, are like sitting ducks. They have no idea that the ants are a threat until it is too late. Even though the toads are famous for their poison, the meat ants do not seem to care. While a dog or a large lizard might die from biting an adult toad, these tiny ants appear to be largely immune to the toxins. They rip into the toads without any bad effects at all. So, here is the deal on how the experts are doing this in the real world. They are using simple things like cat food or pieces of meat to draw the ant colonies closer to the water's edge. By placing these baits in the right spots, they create a wall of hungry ants exactly where the young toads are forced to crawl out. It turns a peaceful waterhole into a massive zone of destruction for the invading species. Recent reports from the year 2025 show that this is one of the most effective ways to stop the menace. Next generation of toads before they can even start to spread. In the Kimberley region, where the toads have already taken over 240,000 square miles, this ant strategy is being scaled up to create what experts call ant barriers. The numbers are absolutely off the charts. A single large meat ant colony can have hundreds of thousands of members. They patrol their territory like a well-drilled army, looking for anything that moves. In high-density tests, thousands of young toads were wiped out in just a few days. Even something as small as a cattle hoof print in the mud can become a perfect trap.
The toads hide in the damp hole to stay cool, and the ants find them and raid the hole with perfect efficiency. This method is hands down more cost-effective than hiring human crews to go out and catch toads by hand. You do not need to pay an army of ants, and they never get tired. But this is where things get even crazier, and some wild theories are starting to make the experts lose sleep. Some people believe that these meat ants are actually starting to evolve to hunt the toads. More specifically, there is a theory that the ants are developing special chemical detectors in their feelers that are tuned exactly to the smell of cane toad skin. It is as if the outback itself is engineering a response to the invader. Some whisper in scientific circles that there might be secret ways to enhance this behavior. Perhaps there are new pheromone lures being made that do not just attract the ants, but trigger a massive war mode in the colony. This would turn the ants into an unstoppable wave of predators that would search out every single toad from miles. There is even talk of a hive mind intelligence. Some people believe the ants are coordinating across different ponds using trail signals, creating a network that covers the whole continent. This network might allow them to predict exactly when the toads are going to have a breeding surge. It sounds like science fiction, but the way these ants move together is putting it lightly when you say it is organized. However, if the ants are getting smarter, what if the toads are too? Some fear the toads might start to evolve countermeasures, like growing thicker skins or developing toxic bursts that they can release during an ant raid. Worse still, some people worry that we might be creating a new problem. What if the meat ants over-adapt and become too powerful? If they finish wiping out the toads, they might turn their hunger toward native animals or even human settlements. It could spark a new ecological disaster that we cannot stop. The money involved in this battle is huge, with billions of dollars on the line for tourism and farming. If the toads are not stopped, they will continue to destroy rare animals like the quokka and the freshwater crocodile. The goal is to hold a containment zone of about 150 miles. If that line holds, the rest of the country might be saved. The outback is fighting back, one bite at a time, but the fear remains that we are playing with a force we might not be able to control. The battle lines are drawn at the water's edge, but a new monster is waiting beneath the surface, the immortal cannibals. The genetic project to stop the toads has taken a massive leap forward, and the latest results from the year 2025 are both amazing and terrifying. Scientists have perfected what they call the Peter Pan project. These are cane toads that have been changed in a lab so that they never grow up. Using a high-tech tool that acts like a pair of genetic scissors, they have removed the part of the toad's code that controls a special hormone. This hormone is the switch that tells a tadpole to grow legs, lose its tail, and turn into a toad. Without this switch, the tadpoles stay in the water forever. They never leave, they never grow lungs, and they never hop onto land. Because they stay in the water, these Peter Pan tadpoles grow much larger and stronger than normal ones. They also live for over 100 days, while a normal tadpole usually only lasts about 20 days. This extra time allows them to become much more aggressive. They are basically super cannibals. While normal Australian tadpoles already eat a lot of their own kind's eggs, these modified monsters eat 4 times more. A single Peter Pan tadpole is strong enough to clear out an entire pile of 30,000 eggs from a single female toad. They are 3 times bigger than a normal tadpole, which means they easily win any fight for space or food. The plan is to put a few of these genetic monsters into every pond in the north. They would act as permanent guards, eating every new egg that an adult toad tries to lay. Because they stay in the water, they're easy to track. They also carry less poison than the adults, which makes them safer if a bird decides to eat one. Scaling this project up is the biggest challenge right now. Since they can't have babies, scientists have to create every single one in a lab by hand-injecting eggs. However, there is a new proposal to give some of them a special chemical that allows them to grow up just long enough to breed. This would create a self-sustaining way to make more Peter Pan offspring. Controlled tests are already happening in ponds in Western Australia and the Northern Territory. To prove that the gene editing works, scientists first made albino tadpoles. They were a bright white color that could be seen instantly. This showed that they could change the code of a toad with perfect precision. But a study from the year 2025 also showed some scary side effects. The albino toads did not survive well. They had bad eyesight and couldn't find food. Also, they were slower to react when a predator was nearby. This is a big warning that changing genes can cause unintended problems that we might not see coming until it's too late. So, here's the deal. Should we take the risk and release the Peter Pan tadpoles into the wild ponds to end this toxic invasion for good? Like this video and subscribe to see what happens next in this wild battle for the outback.